To demonstrate the use of the class path in Java, we are going to write two simple Java files, helper.java, which will have a getMessage method that will return a string, and main.java, which will have a public static void main, and this will simply use the helper. The helper class will be a public class called helper, and this class will have one method, which will be a public string method called getMessage, and this method will return a string, something like hello from helper. And we can save that. Main.java will have a class, again a public class, so public class main. And this class will have a public static void main method that takes a string array, capital S of course, called args. Inside here we'll create a helper, and helper is in com.mantizo, so com.mantizo.helper, helper equals new com.mantizo.helper. And then we'll simply do system.out.println, and we'll output helper.getMessage. All very simple. To compile this, we'll go to the command prompt, and at the command prompt we'll run this command to compile the helper class. What we're saying here is that compile the source files from source/com/mantizo helper.java and output the class file into the classes directory. And if we do that first of all for helper.java, and then again for main.java, what we end up with is a classes directory, and in the subdirectory of classes we'll see that we have com/mantizo and com/pluralsight. In com/pluralsight we have the main class, and in com/mantizo we'll have the helper class. To run this code from the command line, we'd use Java directly to execute the class files. We need to tell it what class files to execute. So you'd think we might be able to do something like Java classes/com/pluralsight/main.class. And that's simply not going to work. The class is not called classes com/pluralsight main. The name of the class is com.pluralsight.main.class. So maybe we could try Java classes and then say com.pluralsight.main.class. And again, this doesn't work. It simply doesn't find the classes there. So we have to tell Java where to find these classes. And there are two ways of doing this. We could set a global class path, and we do that by setting the class path environment variable. And in this case, we can say set class path equals classes, as classes is the directory that contains our Java classes. If we do that, I can then say Java com.pluralsight.main, leave the .class off the end, and the main code runs. We get hello from helper. If I unset class path, so just say set class path equals, and try that again, that's not going to work because it can't find com.pluralsight.main. Setting the global class path is generally not a good idea, however, as this will affect every Java application on the system. If you have an application that uses a jar file that contains classes, and that jar file or another version of that jar file is installed elsewhere on your system, and that elsewhere is on the class path, then you might find that you end up using the wrong jar file. So a better way to set the class path is to set it when we actually run Java itself. And we do that by saying Java -cp or Java -classpath and just specify where the class path is. And we can say Java cp classes, and again we can do com.pluralsight .main, and again it will find the code for me. If we have more than one location to load classes from, we can provide multiple locations on the class path. And we can do that if we're on Windows by separating the locations with a semicolon. If I'm on a Unix-based system, we do it by separating the locations with a colon. So at the moment, we have a classes directory. And this directory, as we've seen, contains a com/Montizo and a com/Pluralsight subdirectory. And it's the Montizo directory that contains our helper class. What we'll now do is move that helper class into a jar file. So if we change into the classes folder, and then from here we can run this command. This says to create a jar file called helper.jar and include the file called com/Montizo/helper.class. If we do that, it creates the file for me. So if I do a dir, there's the helper.jar, and I'll then move that file up one layer into a folder I've created called lib. So if I go back to the root and do a dir, you can see that here now we have our classes folder, our lib folder, and our source folder. The next thing I need to do is to delete the helper class. So I can just do del classes/com/Montizo/helper.class. So now we have a main class that's in the classes directory, but we have no helper class there. So if I try and run java -cp classes com.pluralsight.main, this will try and execute, but it will now try and load the com.Montizo.helper class, and that class doesn't exist, so we get a no class def found error. So we need to tell Java where to find that class, and that class lives in the jar file. So on the class path, we can now specify a semicolon separated list of locations, and one of those locations could be the jar file. So I can say lib/helper.jar and run the code. Sure enough, it finds the class file again, and the code executes correctly. So on Windows, we'd have classes semicolon lib/helper.jar semicolon anything else. On a Unix-based system, we'd use colon. So it would be classes colon lib/helper.jar colon anything else beyond that.